The void became a weapon 5 years after the seventh umbral calamity. The warrior of light returns to a world racked by unstable light. Gaia and Ryne stand in the shattered void, their creation pulsing, alive, wounded. The empty, forged to imprison the first's fragmented soul, now breathes with stolen power. Wounded, turning the empty into a cage the imprison the first's fragmented soul stopped haunting. The oracle weaponized creation itself, a paradox. To trap the first, she forged the empty as both cradle and chains. Norvrant's sin-eater light didn't just scar the land, it carved a mirror. Ryne's gift twisted into a key. Did Gaia always intend the empty to hunger? To become a labyrinth where the first's whispers cling to every shadow, the continent's ruin was not an accident, it was a blueprint. A prison etched into the world's bones. The first is not contained. They are uncontained. Their rage seeps through every fracture in the empty's walls, and the oracle. She built the cage knowing the prisoner would never stop screaming, knowing the screams would become the world's heartbeat. What does it mean when the architect becomes the warden and the warden becomes the haunted? Ash still falls in Norvrant. A century after light's vengeful drowning, the stones remember heat. They remember a sky unsplit by shadow. The first's reflection, once a cradle of crystalline spires, now lies half-submerged in its own weeping light-thick, acidic, etching prayers into dust. Sin-eaters crawl through the ruins, mouths stained with stolen breath. They do not pray. They whisper Venat's name, who refused to burn. He chose Hydaelyn. A god born of negation, summoned to sever Etheirys from its source. The void did not howl when the world fractured, it hummed. A low, hungry chord Ryne wove into the empty's bones. What the Ascians called a failed rejoining was no accident. They had studied the first's heart, mapped its dread. They knew its refusal to die would birth a weapon. The empty was never a void, it was a mirror. Ryne's disciples carved it from the first's guilt, a prison shaped by unspoken sin. When Norvrant's light failed to purge what it could not consume, the Ascians completed the ritual. Forced the every scream firsts buried under fractured will into the Amarot's empty soil core. Like she did not need to starfish in a unmaked jar. Not contained, never that. The first's consciousness leaks into every shard of Etheirys, forced the every scream firsts buried under fractured will into the Amarot's empty soil. The oracle's victory was quiet where it ajar. Like she did not need to starfish in a unmaked jar the world. She made it a wound, a bleeding, breathing tomb where the architect's regrets fuel the warden's hunger, and in the dark between beats, the haunted world keeps time. Waiting for the day the empty's prisoner learns to dream again. The Oracle of Darkness didn't just remap the world, she turned the empty into a prison. Gaia's hands, trembling with Mitron's reawakened fire, shaped the empty's bones during the Eden raids. Her soul, a lantern for the god's fractured light, became the anvil where Ryne and she reforged the first's balance. Elemental threads, earth, air, water, flame were not restored. They were rewritten, a key was embedded in the code, a lock. The first's consciousness, splintered by its own hubris, did not vanish, it was folded. Layered into the empty's core like a wound sewn tight. Every storm that roared, every river that bled, carried the weight of this design. Ryne's calculations, Gaia's Wiltwo minds weaving a cage disguised as salvation. The void did not conquer Etheirys, it inherited a masterpiece. Mitron's fire burned brightest in the act of erasure. Gaia ascended not as a savior, but as an architect of entrapment. The convocation seats, the azure dragoon's wings, the crystal exarch's gazole were built on a lie, a monument to containment. The first's whispers now echo in the empty's silence, trapped between the breath of stars. Did the oracle foresee the chains she forged? Or was Mitron's voice in her ear, cold and certain as the prison took shape? The world's hunger for balance was a hunger for forgetting, the first's crimes buried. Its power neutralized, a god reduced to a cipher. The empty breathes, the first dreams, and Gaia's name, carved into the foundation of this order, waits. Waiting for the day the prisoner learns to dream again. The empty hums, a scar reforged into a blade. Venat's hands tremble as he turns from the crystalline core, his voice a blade itself. Asterisk, I will not bear this. Asterisk, dust of shattered stars coats his boots. Emetzelch steps forward, his shadow swallowing the light. The scholar's ice pools of ancient frost fix on the prison's new shape. Asterisk, let me take the weight. Asterisk, he breathes. A vow, a surrender, the ground shudders. Harshephant retreats, his heel cracking the obsidian floor. A fissure splits the air, thin as a hair, and the void's whisper seeps through. Asterisk, you cannot outrun what you've made. Asterisk, it hisses. Xenos kneels. The warrior's name is a stone dropped into a well. Asterisk, Ryne. Asterisk, the crystarium's light flares, blinding. A figure emerges, there form a lattice of fire and shadow. They reach not toward the empty, but into the heart of the light itself. The crystarium screams, the oracle of darkness watches. Her fingers trace the empty's edges, now sharp as a predator's teeth. Ryne's design twisted by her will. The first's fragmented soul stirs within, a trapped thunderstorm. It does not struggle, it asterisk listens asterisk. The warrior's body arcs with stolen radiance, their skin etched with glowing veins, a bridge, a conduit. The light, too pure to be contained, bleeds into the void's hunger. The air thickens. Xenos' breath fogs, asterisk, you are the key, asterisk, he whispers. Asterisk, break the lock. Asterisk, Emetzelch's hands press against the empty surface. His flesh does not burn. The prison's walls ripple, reshaping. A labyrinth of mirrored voids unfolds, each reflecting a different age of the first's consciousness ridge, grief, longing. The oracle's voice cuts through. Asterisk, now you cage what you once called father. Asterisk, Emetzelch does not flinch. His sacrifice is not his own. It is a thread pulled from Gaia's tapestry, weaving a snare for the god who abandoned her. The warrior collapses, the light they bore now a crown of ash. The empty's new purpose is complete. The first will wake not as a force of ruin, but as a question trapped in a mirror. A prisoner who must answer, asterisk, what remains when a god learns to forget. Asterisk, the world holds its breath, the oracle turns. Her shadow stretches, long and hungry, toward the horizon where the next storm gathers. To understand what happens next, you must understand what they gave up. The oracle turned Gaia's empty into a prison, yet Ryne's hand destabilized the void's grasp. The first's mind writhes, half-trapped, half-unbound. What does a god sacrifice when their creation becomes the reckoning? Ancients perished, Scions watched, their sacrifices etched into the empty's bones. Ryne's hand did not break the void, it bent it. The first soul, split between prison and freedom, became a blade. Gaia's design, Ryne's design meant to end the first suffering, instead forged a cycle. Birth, fracture, repeat. The seventh umbral calamity shattered Dalamud, Bahamut's chains splintered. The void, starved of its prey, turned the empty against itself. What was never a prison always a bomb devoured. The first's whispers, half-formed, seeped into the cracks. They became storms, they became hunger. Scions bled to seal the fractures. Ancients burned to buy time. Zodiark's final stand was not against the void, but against the empty's new hunger. A god's weapon turned on its maker. The oracle of darkness did not remap the world. She remade it as a wound. Ryne's choice echoes. The empty no longer holds, it hungers. The first unwhole pushes against its walls, each rebirth a scream, each decay a dirge. The cycle was never meant to end, only to shift from containment to consumption. What does a god become when their mercy is a noose, when their child's creation is the scaffold? The empty, once a cradle, now cradles the first's agony. And Ryne's name, etched in its depths, waits, not to end the song, to change its key. The empty's prison was not an accident. Ryne's calculations, Gaia's will twined. The Ascians had stolen a reflection's soul, now the oracle stole a god's. She carved the first's essence into the void's ribs, not to destroy, to bind. A cage of starlight and hunger where the first screams fed the empty's growth. The world's map bent to contain Ida's scar across Etheirys' skin. Mitron's vessel became the architect of her own chains. Lines was a shackle. Vessel became the each architect of her own mountain chains raised, a guard. Each river diverted, a moat. Gaia did not weep, she calculated. The rejoining project was a mirror, cracked. Ascians sought unity, the oracle wove division. Where they bound reflections to sources, she bound sources to void. Ryne's equations became her scalpel. His name, a curse whispered in the empty's winds. Duality was her signature. The hand that healed Etheirys' wounds also gripped the first's throat. The voice that sang of balance hummed a dirge in the void's key. No paradox, only purpose. The Ascians called her a weapon. They did not see the blade was hers. The empty was never meant to be a prison. It was a crucible. The first's agony sharpens Gaia's edge. Her world is a forge, her war a hymn, and Ryne's name, waiting in the dark not to end the song. to change its key. The Scions of the seventh dawn still walk their vigil. Gaia's hand guides them, unseen, through the fractures of the ether. The empty humps a cage of light and shadow, its purpose never to erase but to hold. The first's voice lingers in its depths, a hymn of broken will, its edges blurred but not silenced, a weapon forged in desperation. A prison built by the architect's own hands. Ryne's name echoes in the void's hollow breath, not as an end but as a keystone. The Oracle of Darkness did not conquer Etheirys. She bent Gaia's creation to her design, weaving the empty into a shroud for the first scattered soul. The cost is written in the sky, storms coil where the ether thins. The Scions mend what they can, but the wound in the world's spine refuses to close. Gaia does not rest, she watches, she waits. For the tide of the first's memory still rises, trapped between oblivion and return. Is the empty a tomb? Or a cradle? The answer drifts in the dark, unanswered, and in that silence the song of the war still turns. The Ascians forged rejoining as salvation. Gaia carved the empty as a wound. One sought unity, the other division. Both became architects of the same prison. The first soul, splintered across reflections, was a fire the Ascians tried to stoke. Gaia doused it by shattering the mirrors. Yet her fractures became the bars of a cage the Oracle of Darkness would later twist into a blade. Containment, the word binds them both. The Ascians bound the first in chaos, stitching reflections to a source. Gaia bound the first in silence, severing threads to leave only echoes. The empty was never meant to cradle hope, it was a vault, a scar, a lever. The Oracle did not build anew, she repurposed. Where Gaia left void, she planted purpose. The empty's hollow became a throat to scream the first's name into nothing, a prison within a prison. Hope then was not the Ascians' weapon, nor Gaia's, it was the thing they both served. The cycle, create to confine, confine to delay the day the first wakes whole. Despair is the tax paid for that delay. The empty's walls are thin. The first's voice seeps through. The Ascians heard it as a call to reunite. Gaia heard it as a warning to divide. Both were right, both were used. What is the empty now? A tomb, a cradle? The answer drifts in the dark, unanswered, and in that silence the song of the war still turns. The reconstructed void hums with stolen light crimson veins of Amarot's forge, cerulean fractures from the Shival's breath. Gaia's hand rests on Ryne's shoulder, their shadows merging where the empty's edge curls like a wound. The Oracle's voice, thin as static, whispers ** containment is an illusion *, a line from the main scenario, etched into the air. Here, triumph curdles into unease. The empty, once a cradle for life, now cradles the first's fractured awareness, its whispers trapped in a loop of *, almost * remembering. A prison, a mirror. The element's whispers thrum a dissonant hymn, half erased, half eternal. Ryne's eyes glisten not with hope, but the grit of a gambler who folded too soon. The cost, a god's consciousness, splintered but unbroken, circling the void like a starved wraith. The Oracle's shadow stretches, a blade unsheathed. * we have not won, * she murmurs. * we have only delayed the reckoning. * the camera pulls back, the void yawns. And in its depths, the war's song turns again. What did the Scions of the seventh dawn uncover in Gaia's shadowed blueprints? The Ascians' forced rejoining birthed a prison Gaia's empty, a wound shaped to bind the first. Yet the void's triumph was never total. The reckoning they delayed now stirs in Amarot's